All right, any hoosers. All right, that's ready to go. So I am calling this 1-6 domain and range. Oops, I didn't mean to grab this color. Hold on. Okay, domain and range. Let me get this all lined up here. Can anybody tell me, sorry, let me get this squared up. There we go. In your own words, what in the world is domain and range? You've heard these words before, right? In math, you've heard teachers spouting off about them, but what even is it? What's domain? Let's start with just domain. Domain is, go ahead, Sam.
Is it like X values?
Yeah, it's basically if you have a relation, right? So that relationship between two variables, usually X and Y, the domain is literally just all the X values. So if you have a set of ordered pairs and you wanted to list the domain, you literally just pull all the X values from that list of ordered pairs. How's it? Right, and so your range is just going to be your Y values. Exactly. So Y values is if I had that string of ordered pairs, I would just pluck out all the Y's and that would be my range. Does it get harder than that? It can get a little weird. So we're going to talk first. Let's start off with the easy stuff. Okay, so domain. These are all of the X values or inputs in a relation. And I'm saying relation because it doesn't necessarily have to be a function. It can. So you know what, maybe I'll put or function. If the relation happens to be a function, great. If it's not, we can still talk about its domain. So then our range is just going to be same thing, but all the Y values. Or outputs. Okay, so let's say I did give you a string of ordered pairs. So let's say this was my random string of ordered pairs, and I asked you to find the domain. Okay, so when we are going to give the domain, usually because there's a whole list of numbers that appear in this. So very often we use those curly brackets. We use those well, I mean, you can use them all the time, but you see them most often when your answer is a whole list of things. Order does not matter here. It's a good habit to get into to put your domain just in numerical order, but you don't have to. If you have an X value that appears more than once, or a y value, you wouldn't put it in 2 times. You would only put it in once. So I'm literally just going to pluck all of my x coordinates. I'm not going to bother putting them in order, but you can, just so you can see exactly where they're coming from. So I'd have 1, -4, 0, and 2. None of them repeat. So there we are. There is my domain. I'm just extracting my x values. If I wanted to find the range, it's just as easy. I'm just going to pull the y values. Again, if there happens to be any repeats, I'm not going to put them in more than once. But I don't actually think I have any repeats. 2, 6, -3, and 1. If you want to put it in order, great. If you don't, it really doesn't matter because, again, it's just a listing. If I said, hey, list all your pets' names, does it matter the order you give it to me in? No, it's just a list. Now I ask you, this relation that I gave you, is it a function? How do you tell if you're given a string of, Jimmy, go ahead. Then what is it? Correct. So is this one a function?
Yeah.
It is, because none of my x's ever repeat. Jack.
No, I go from that.
Oh my gosh, go so fast. Sometimes, instead of giving you just a list of ordered pairs, what I might give you, let me see if I have a grid handy. Maybe, maybe not. I kind of do. Okay. Try it this way. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so here's another way, another example that I could give you. I could literally just give you, that's not the one I want. I want this one. Sorry, the printing is not super great, but it's okay. There. So I might, instead of giving you a list of ordered pairs, I might give you a graph. So let me just highlight where the dots are because my. So if I gave you this, and I asked you, okay, give me the domain and range for this. So again, you're just going to pluck out all of the x coordinates. So does anyone want to give this one an attempt? What would your domain be here? Go ahead, Sam.
I got -3, -2, 0, 2, 2, 4.
I agree. Aren't those all of my x coordinates for each of those dots? Right? And then my range. We got the range. Don't be strange. Give me the range. Or be strange, then fine. Oh, come on. I personally like to work from the top down. So my highest one looks to be at a, I'm only looking at y values, right? So that's a +4. And then my way down, the next one is at a +1. Then I've got one at 0, -1, and this one looks like -4. I ask you again, would this relation represent a function? Would you say yes? I agree. Remember, you can always do the vertical line test, right? So if you're given a graph, you can just pass that vertical line through. It never hits more than once. So yep, that is perfect. I could give you a table. Let's say I had the following. Yeah, let's do that. And I asked you what the domain was. You would tell me. Domain. Angelina, go ahead. That's it. You're just listing them off. And then who's going to give me the range? Adam, go ahead.
Or not negative, but just four.
Just positive 4. Yes. And see, even though it appears 4 times, it doesn't matter. I only list it once. So there only happens to be one thing in my range, and it's just a 4. And that's fine. Is this thing a function? It is. The x's never repeat. Remember, we don't care about the y's repeating.
Well, it's a.
Yes, good job. Sam.
I have your quiz out in front of me, so I'm purposefully checking to make sure that I ask you questions that are just like what you might see here. I really like this quiz. It is multiple choice. I think there's like 1 or 2 questions where you actually have to fill something in, but there's a lot of like select all of the options that would work. So let me give you one like let me give you one that's similar. Oh, here's a great question. Oh, sorry. So one of the questions is worded like this: select 4 ordered pairs that would create a domain of and then you have all of these choices. So for example, you might have a question that looks like this. So it's not just one answer, you would have to select 4 of them. So you pick 4 of these that would create that domain. That's not so bad, is it? You give it a shot. I think it's kind of fun. I was so excited when I found this. Okay, who can tell me the 4 ordered pairs that you would select? Jay, go ahead. Say it again. A, C, D, E. I agree. Easy peasy, right? So I'm just looking down. Here's my domain. So I need to make sure I have each of these in my X slot, and there they are. And the other choices would not work, so there we go. All right, okay, Miss Xavier, really, this is so easy. Okay, let me turn it up a notch if you insist.
I can insist.
I felt pressure to turn it up a notch, so up we shall go. What if instead of me just giving you ordered pairs or giving you a graph with ordered pairs, what if we actually had lines or curves and we wanted to talk about their domain and range? Thought you'd never ask. We'll start off with something easy. How about we'll start with just a straight line, okay? So if here is my coordinate plane, and here is just some random line, and you were asked to give the domain and range of this line. Yes. So in this case, right, there are no X values. This line is going to keep going forever, right? These arrows on the end indicate, hey, this is going forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So every single X value in existence is going to be part of this line. So this, I'm not just listing off just whole numbers, it's everything. It's a continuous line. So my range is going to be, my domain and my range actually are both going to be continuous. They're just going to go on forever. So what we're going to say for our domain, you can write this a couple of different ways. Usually I see people do X. Well, some people just write all reals. Something like that. You might just do that. You could do fancy set builder notation. Oh, let's see if I even remember. You would do X such that X is an element of all reals. Is that right? Yeah. So I don't care. As long as you indicate to me that it's all reals, it's going on forever. Same thing is happening with the range. My Y's. All right, think about this. This is going to keep going up and down forever in both directions. So every single Y value is also going to get covered. So all reals belong in my range. I think I'm just going to add this because I see on your quiz, they say is a real number. So all of these mean the same thing. It's just letting you know everything is included. Okay, is that always the case? Of course not. Let's take a look at, oh, I don't know. How about our friend, the parabola? Just a friendly parabola. And I will have this parabola come down. Maybe it'll just touch the x-axis like this. So let's start off with the domain. Okay, another way to think about domain is there ever going to be a break in my X values? Is there ever a number that I cannot plug in for X because it would give me an undefined function or something's going to break?
Wait, is that right on the X?
Yes, so it's going to hit right there. This is just a continuous curve. So it's going to be, you know, this is probably what? X minus 2, the whole thing squared, something like that, to get it to shift over to the right a little bit. There's nothing that I can't plug in for X. There's going to be a value. If I said, hey, what's the value of this function at 4? I mean, I don't have a scale here, but there would be an answer, right? If this is 4, oh yeah, I'd get an answer here. If I said, hey, what's the value of this function when X is 0? I know it's not on my graph, but eventually, wouldn't there be a value at 0? Right? Because the parabola is just going to keep going out and up forever. So eventually, if I zoomed out enough, this parabola would cross the y-axis, wouldn't it? So there is a value, even though I can't see it on my graph, but there would be a value if I had this function, right, written. I could plug in 0 and get an answer back out. I could plug in -10 and get an answer. Again, I'd have to zoom way out, but I could do it, right? There's no number that I can't plug into this. Does that make sense? Are you with me? So when I just have a continuous graph that's going on forever in both directions, my domain is again just going to be all reals. So our domain here, X, is all reals. Because not only is my graph going up, it's going out, right? It's still moving to the left and to the right. It just gets slower and slower and slower, but it eventually goes. So if I could zoom out forever, it's going to eventually expand over the entire x-axis. You with me? Okay, you say you are. Kids always get this all confused. Now let's talk about the range, my friends. Remember what this graph is doing. It's going up and out like this forever. Is it ever going to come back down? You will never get a y value that's down here, no matter what you plug in for x. Do you see that? It doesn't matter what you plug in. If I say, hey, what's the value of this thing when x is 7? It's some value up here. You're never going to get an answer down here. So I have to look at the lowest spot in my whole parabola, which in this case just so happens to be a y value of 0, right? That just so happens to be my lowest one. So isn't the range going to be 0 and everything greater than it? Those are the y values I'm getting out here. So my range is not all reals, friends. The range is going to be anything greater than or equal to 0 for this particular graph. Because my lowest point had a y value at 0. I'm going to come right here and I'm going to give you another parabola. Let's do basically the same thing, but I'm just going to drop it down a little bit. And let's assume that that lowest point, let's put that at, I don't know, how about 2, -1? Let's say that's where that point is. What is my domain? Domain, give me domain first. Those are the x's. What's the domain of that? Lizzie, go ahead. All reals. My range, though, the range does not cover everything. Can you see it? I'll zoom in a little bit. What's my range going to be? Lizzie, go ahead. Yes. I will get numbers that are greater than or equal to -1, but I'll never get anything below that. I'll never get anything below that. So you are basically stating, all right, well, what range values will I actually get? And there they are. So let me give you one to try, another parabola. And then we'll take a look-see Lou at some other types of graphs. Okay, my coordinate plane. Let's do this. Bless you. Let's say that was my graph, and let's put this point at, oh, how about -2, 3? So take a moment and see if you can figure out the domain and range of this thing. I'm gonna do one more slightly different one. Okay, who thinks they have the domain for this one right here? Your domain would be all reals. Those X's, remember, so X's, you got to think about side to side. This thing is moving to the left and to the right, just slowly, but it will eventually cover every single number in the X axis. But the range, friends, Jill,
Is it y is less than or equal to 3?
yes. Y is less than or equal to 3 in this case. I'm only going to get numbers that are down here, right? So they're always going to be less than or equal to 3. I never get the ones that are up here. So you are always remember that when you are saying what your domain and range is, you're saying what exists on this graph. You don't have Y values up here. So we're not putting them. All right. The 3 parabolas that we have done so far have been functions, right? They have all passed the vertical line test until we get here. This thing would not be a function, but I can still talk about its domain and range. Try this one. So I'm just going to add not a function. This one fails the vertical line test very quickly, but it still has a domain and range. See if you can figure out what those would be. Okay, the domain is, Lizzie, go ahead. Say one more time, X is greater than or equal to what? Yes. It's not all reals this time, right? Because my graph is not covering all of the X values in creation. It starts here and it's covering all the X values this way. So my domain in this case would only be the X is greater than or equal to 2. But my range, friends, what's that? Lizzie, go ahead. Yes, here the range is going to be all reals because it's going to keep going up just slowly, but it's going up this way and it's going down this way. So eventually every single vertical value, all my Y values will be covered. Does that make sense? Yeah, you're with me? Okay, okay. So let me try a graph that's not a parabola. We have all different types of graphs, right? They could look like anything. Let's do let's try a circle. Circle? Sure, why not? And I'll make the circle, I'll put it right around the origin just to make our life easier. So let's assume that has a radius of 1. So this would be 1, 1, -1, -1. This does not have a domain of all reals. It doesn't go on forever over the entire x-axis. So what values are covered under the domain here? Anyone care to venture a guess? Zach? Exactly. Don't I have all of the x values in between -1 to +1? So I have everything greater than -1 and less than 1 at the same time. So how are we going to write that? A compound inequality that looks like this. So I want to be greater than or equal to, right? -1. But at the same time, I want to be less than or equal to +1. Jaden, do you do interval notation? You can do that if you want. Does anybody else do interval notation? There's another way to write this. Hazy, you do too? Yeah, so if you want to, so I'll just put it up here if you want. So that's up to you. Usually I don't talk about interval notation until actually algebra 3. So if you don't want to, if you just kind of want to tune me out for a second, you could. These would be closed brackets, -1 to +1 closed bracket. So that's just another way to write the same thing. Again, irritations with math. Why do we have so many different ways to say the same thing? I don't know. Not up to me. But any hoosers. So domain, there it is. What's your range going to be? Range. Huh. Huh. What are the y values I'm covering? Anybody have a guess? Sam, go ahead.
-1 is less than or equal to 5, less than or equal to 1.
Exactly.
And then
I
go
have,
to the bathroom.
sure, it goes so fast. My y's are going to be also in between that -1 to +1. Sabia, does it get harder than this? Kind of. We can have some graphs that have holes in them, like an actual hole. Like you would drop off the face of the earth if you were playing a video game and you fell into this hole. So let me give you a graph that has such a hole, and we will figure out the domain and range. And then that's pretty much it. So let's just have, let me give some numbers so we can talk about them. Let's say we had a graph that did something like this. Something like that. Huh. Okay. So domain, let's talk about x values. It's not going to be all reals because this isn't covering everything, right? This side is going forever, but I stop here. This doesn't keep going forever. So I have this very clear sort of definite endpoint here. So if we talk about domain, I think it's easiest to just move from left to right. So I don't have, the graph doesn't even exist until I hit -1. You with me so far? It continues from -1 until forever with just this one little hiccup. I just don't have a value at +1, but I have everything else starting at -1 to forever. So if that had been filled in, right? If this had just been a solid dot, couldn't I have said x is just going to be greater than or equal to -1? But I do have this hole right here. I do just have this, I just can't have +1. So I can say, hey, x is going to be everything greater than or equal to -1. But I might have to say x cannot equal +1. So those two things put together would now encompass my entire domain. Does that make sense? Yeah, everybody's okay with that? All right, so I have all the values represented from -1 to infinity. Just gotta skip over +1. How do you think the range is gonna look on this one? Do I have any y values down here? Will I ever get any down here? No. So the smallest y value I'm ever gonna get is 0, right? So that's gonna be my starting point. And then where do I go? This is a horizontal line, so it's not gonna keep going up forever. It's just gonna keep going to the side forever. How do we think we'd represent that? Well, let me ask you this. I do have a y value of 0, right? I have a y value of 0. I have a y value of all of these decimals until I get up to +1. I know there's a hole right there, but don't I have other y values at +1? So believe it or not, the range for this is going to look like this. I'm going to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to +1. And I don't have to skip over +1. Because Sadie, you have a hole right there. I know I don't have a value of 1 for my y's right there, but don't I have a y value of 1 right there? And right there, and right there, and right there, and forever? So even though I don't have it right there, it doesn't matter. Eventually, I will get a y value of +1. Does that make sense? These can be tricky. How are we feeling? So let me give you your homework and we can do, maybe I'll pull a couple of them out just to do together. There's some really good ones up here. While these are coming back out, I want you to think about, is this graph right here a function? Yes.
I forgot to turn the assignment in, but I did it, and I just submitted it.
Okay, it should alert me.
Okay.
If tomorrow I still didn't change the grade, just let me know again.
Okay.
Okay, so real quick, this example that we did, would that be a function? Yes or no? What do you say? Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the homework I just gave you. And maybe we'll just do, let's do number 2. Take a look at that one real quick. Zoom in a bit. All right, so they are asking you to give the domain, the range, and then tell if this thing is a function or not. So the domains. So it's not all reals, right? I don't continue on forever in both directions. I have a definite starting point, kind of. Oh.
Please pardon the interruption. At the 8:55 bell, all students will report to their advisory location. Seniors, please wait in your advisory location until you are dismissed by intercom for your senior meeting. You'll be picking up your report card to advisory and then being dismissed to the auditorium when it is time. Faculty, please log into the appropriate Zoom link. It was just emailed to you again this morning at the very start of advisory, as close to 9 o'clock if you can, so that you don't miss any of the presentation. There should be time at the end of advisory to disseminate report cards and student IDs, and I'll hop back on the intercom at that time. Have a good day, Santa.
Okay, so here is my domain for that one. Notice I don't have the or equal to bar right there because it's filled in. So I don't actually have an X value at -5, but I have everything greater than 5 until I hit, or -5 until I hit +5. The range for this thing, don't I have everything in between +2 down to -2? I know there's a hole there, but there's still other values that have -2 as their y's. So the range would just be from -2 up to, oh, y's, sorry. From -2 up to +2. Oh, and I need they're both or equal to, right? Because I do have values at -2 and at +2. Is this thing a function, number 2? Yes, passes that vertical line test. Okay, so I would like you to try the front of this, just the remaining ones that there are. We will talk about this tomorrow. I guess we'll see how this assignment goes. Maybe we'll have the quiz in the second half of class tomorrow. If not, then we'll just push it to Wednesday. Would you rather me just push it to Wednesday? All right, fine. We'll call it Wednesday, yes.
How many do you see?
All of them. Yes. Please finish the front. I mean, there is no back, is there? There's no back. All righty. Enjoy your advisory. I will post the notes and the recording of this, which is still going. I'll stop it in a minute. Bye, see you tomorrow. Bye.
Hey.
Hello.
So would you like me to do 1 pie or?
Try it, at least.
I don't
try it.
have the paper.
But what if I get a bad grade in this class? I can't have my report card. I can't like talk bad. I mean.
Thank you.
You certainly, you wouldn't be the first student, so.
No, I'm pretty decent at math. I like math. So I don't think I'm horrible.
Well, it's okay if you are. Hello.
Benji, do you need a hug? It's been bad. It's been bad. Oh. It's just. I don't, Mr. Mom. Oh. Oops, we're having, I missed the test. Yeah, the other day. Yeah. He said that he was giving me a harder version because I had 40 days. So I didn't study. It's been bad. And I don't understand what's going on. I missed half of it. I totally guess on my MCATs. Except for maths. I was like, yeah. It's like, yeah, the mitochondria. I think that was when people just like, yeah, I just get by, you know? There's like 3, why did they have to call over and out? Like, a simple call. Yeah. Or an email maybe? Yeah. Email, like random library, like, nothing. And then I got this. Oh, it's been bad. That's cool, right? My socks fell off. And now I'm walking. So my socks have to work.
Oh.
Yeah.